As dads, some days we feel like we have all the answers, and some days we feel like we don't have a clue. If that describes you, you're at the right place. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. Hey, I'm Ted Lowen. I'm the host of the All Pro Dad Podcast.
And I am Megan Tigner, and I'm one of the members of the iMOM podcast, and we're doing something a little bit different today. This is our first crossover episode with All Pro Dad and iMOM. And to give you a little bit of context, Family First is the overarching nonprofit, and we have two main programs, All Pro Dad and iMOM. And so that is what has brought us together today to do this joint episode together.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that we did. And because this is a topic that's not just for moms or dad. And it's this big topic that we all struggle with, and that's screen time. I know parents have got that all figured out, but it's our kids that struggle, right? But no, we're excited about doing that together. Megan, you were sharing a story with me as we're talking about this interview the other day about your son. Do you want to share that really quick?
Yeah, I was super convicted because I have a 5-year-old and 2-year-old little boys. And I walked out of the room, left my phone somewhere, and one of them brought it to me and said, "Mom, you forgot your phone." And I was just like, I cannot go. They think I can't go anywhere without my phone because it's constantly attached to my hand, or I'm on it or something like that. And it was just so convicting to me as a parent, because I think this is really the first generation of kids that's going to see parents constantly attached to their phone. So I am super excited to have Joey here today with RO, because he's done a ton of research on this and has an awesome product. So we wanted to welcome Joey.
Megan, Ted, it's so good to see you. Thank you for having me. And by the way, this being the first iMOM and All Pro Dad together, it makes sense because I have the beard of a dad, but I have the hair of a mom. So I have long hair. So this is perfect. I'm like the perfect blend for the two, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us a little bit, Joey, about your family before we dive in.
Yeah, my wife and I, Kristen and I, have been married for 20 years. Just for a visual for you, I'm on the taller side. I'm 6'5". Kristen claims 5 feet tall, but she's maybe just a smidge under. So she's tiny. We met in college, and opposites attracted there, at least from a height perspective. And then in the first couple of years of marriage, we realized how truly opposite we were, but we weathered those years. And then we have a 16-year-old son, Harrison, and a 14-year-old daughter, Gianna, and we live in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Love that.
Well, tell us a little bit about, so you and your partner, Heath Wilson, started RO. Tell us a little bit what led you guys to get the company going.
Yeah, so RO began. RO has been on the market for a couple of years, and we've been in business for a couple of years. But this really goes back years. So I'll take you back 11 years. In fact, when my son Harrison, who I mentioned is 16 years old now, when Harrison was 5 years old, and Harrison was playing in his very first soccer season. And for any parents out there who are in youth sports, or you've been part of youth sports, specifically soccer, I think there's something about soccer for this. You know, the really good kids, like the kids who are scoring all the goals and the kids who have the most success, are kids who appear to have just gotten out of like a work release program, or maybe live in a halfway house or on parole. Like these are aggressive children out there just dominating the soccer fields. Harrison was not one of those. So, the sweetest kid in the world, kind of high EQ, just a great kid. And as a result, Harrison had not yet scored a soccer goal on this particular Saturday. But here we are, my wife and I, we lug out the lawn chairs, take our 2-year-old daughter at the time out there to the soccer fields with us to sit through another hour of soccer. But this particular day, something really, truly extraordinary happened. And it happened about midway through the game. And this moment, it kind of, as you play this moment in your mind, it kind of comes back in like slow motion cinematic terms, because at this moment, Harrison rears back his leg and he kicks the ball and it glides over the grass, and it's like cue the James Horner, music, the beautiful Last of the Mohicans music, as this ball goes into the back of the net for Harrison's first soccer goal. And the sweet crowd, the parents, they went nuts because they knew that Harrison had not yet scored a goal and everybody else on the team had. Harrison's coach comes and lifts him up and hoists him above his shoulders. But there was this little split second, almost an indecipherable split second between the ball going in the back of the net and his coach lifting him up when Harrison did something that 5-year-old boys do. Harrison turned to the sidelines to share this moment with me, for him to see the pride on my face and the smile on my face. And it really was just absolutely magical, except I missed it. Every bit of what I just described, I didn't see with my eyes. I didn't see any of it. I was looking down at my phone. In fact, when Harrison turned to the sidelines, all he saw was the top of my head because I'm just looking down at my phone. And, you ask like, okay, well, what were you doing? And by the way, it could have been the most important work email I've ever had in my life. It could have been me just watching YouTube videos, which is more likely. But what I do know is that I completely missed the moment, and there was only one first soccer goal, and I wasn't there for it. And I had a moment of realization because my wife told me what happened. I had a moment of realization where I just said, there's something wrong. Like, this doesn't feel good. I mean, you all know this, you're in this, and people are listening. We spend so much of our lives thinking about the person we're going to meet someday and we're going to marry someday. And then we spend so much time thinking about our kids someday. And for a lot of us, it's very difficult to get pregnant and to have a child. And you spend a lot of time and money and effort and tears and emotion and everything on that. And then I just found all of that. I have the benefit of retrospect thinking back on this. We have all those things. And here I was wasting away that relationship with a device that sits in my pocket. And I couldn't stand to have an hour of just focus on what he was doing. And it may not have been that important to me at the time, but I look back and realize how beautifully important it could have been. So what I came to was this relationship with my phone is damaging all my relationships around me. So little did I know that Heath Wilson, who's now my business partner, Heath had just sold a business. He was thinking about this as well, and just said, hey, I got consumed in work on my phone, and it was all I thought about, and neglected my family. And so he texted me one day and said, hey, let's get together for lunch. And he laid out this thought, which was, what if our families could look different? What if, even though we believe that phones are here to stay, and we believe that, by the way, and this is just a way of life, what if that weren't the case? What if we could change the relationship we had with our phones, and as a result, change our families? And the belief at the beginning truly was like, let's do this for our families. And then if it helps our families, I bet it can help a lot of other families. So it was birth. That was 5 years ago when we had that conversation, we had that lunch, and we've been on the journey ever since, been on the market for a couple of years. And just for anybody listening, I want to just preface all of this discussion with two things. One, this is not a product pitch. It won't be a product pitch. We're here and available, but this is not about a product. This is about for you, for your lifestyle, the things you can do to take hold of this, because we believe it's the most hopeful opportunity we have as parents. And then the second thing is there's not going to be any guilt or shame that's associated with this. So it's easy to put up defenses as we talk about phones and screens and all that stuff, but let's just go ahead and remove that and give ourselves some grace and just receive this, and just receive it without judging yourself, condemning yourself, but hearing the truth and then having the hope to believe that there's a better future.
I love that, Joey. And thank you for being honest and sharing that story. I know that every parent's got one, right? We've all had those moments of going, my kids are teenagers now, and there's sometimes they'll walk in and my wife and I will both be on their phone. Of course, they're really great at saying, hey, look at the screenagers. Look at you two winners.
Do they say that?
Oh, yeah. They call it screenagers sometimes. They're like, that's fair. And so, but I think everybody listening right now, moms or dads, we have those moments. Absolutely. And I love that you said that, hey, there's no judgment here. Yeah. One of the reasons we were so excited to have you on today is you've done so much research about our relationships with phones. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And it's funny, as you said, relationships with phones, and as I said it, and as people heard that, I bet no one batted an eye at the idea of us having a relationship with our phones. Right. But I do think it's important for us to really look at that and realize that it is freaking weird that we have a relationship with an object. Like that for adults, that is very odd, right? So you think about any other object we have in our life. You think about my lawnmower, for example. My lawnmower, I see once a week, about 9 months out of the year, right? But It's not as if when a conversation gets boring, I go sneak in a quick mo, right? Like you do. This is not, which by the way, I've told that a couple times. Yeah. There are wives who have told me they're like, my husband actually is the type of guy who will sneak in a quick mo when things get boring. So for that may not be a perfect example. I do get that, but this is something that helps me accomplish a task for myself. This is not a relationship. Maybe we have relationships with cars, but that's still kind of utilitarian A to B. And so it's weird that we have a relationship with our phones. And as we've done more research on this, we have found that children have relationships with objects. So like, okay, well, that's interesting. Well, what is that about? So the relationships that kids have relationships with are called comfort objects or transitional objects. And we all know what those are. Those are blankies and those are binkies and those are teddy bears. And they serve a very, very important role in the development of a child. They help, just like the name, a transitional object, they help transition a child from dependence into independence. So when their mom leaves the room, they'll cling to their teddy bear to give themselves a false sense of security. The teddy bear is not giving them any security, but it's giving them a false sense of security in the absence of relationships. But we as adults are clinging to these objects, being reverted back to childhood. We're clinging to these objects that give us a false sense of security, but we're doing it in the presence of real relationships. We're doing it at the dinner table. We're doing it in the middle of conversations, right? And so these little things, they're reverting us back to this childhood dependence on an object. And that alone should be, I think, a warning signal to us to say, like, that doesn't quite feel right to me. And even just as a principle, that doesn't feel right to me, on top of the fact that, like, it is getting in the way of all of these things for us. So we've done even more kind of thought and thought around, okay, well, how is it a relationship? Like, why is it that a phone is now a relationship? And I believe that we've built a relationship with our phones in the very same way that we build relationships with people. And that always begins, I say always, let's go 99%, don't take me too literally. That always begins with proximity. We are friends. We have relationships with the people that we are around. So that sounds obvious, but when it comes to our phones, we have our phones. Statistics tell us that 91% of us have our phones with us 24 hours a day. We don't have to move our feet to reach our phones. 91% of us.
91% have our phones
I
with
believe
us.
it.
I mean, isn't that interesting? And it kind of makes sense. I mean, listen,
Which is why my child brought it to me. He thought I couldn't go somewhere without it. I mean,
yeah,
it's
just
sad.
for a split second, you were in the 9% club, right? And so you had to go get that binky back. So again, it makes sense. Like, we're with our phones all the time. They do a bunch of great things, but here's why we enter into, we call this the PID loop, PID. And it begins with that proximity. And when you're around something a lot, what are you going to do? You're going to interact with it more, just like the people in the pickup line, the carpool line. Like, you're going to interact with the people you're around. So because our phones are with us, as a result, we're interacting with them all the time. And it's not those inbound notifications that are killing us, which everybody says, oh, just silence your notifications and everything's fine. The problem with that is that 89% of our smartphone usage is self-initiated, that we are the ones who are initiating that. So Ted, this morning, I've already rewatched Michael Harris Jr. hit his grand slam last night against the Giants, right? And then after, I don't know if you're a Braves fan, I know you're in Atlanta, but I am a huge Braves fan, but I watched that. And then what do? Then I check the weather, and then I check an email, and then I check a group text. And so we go down these rabbit holes. So it's not as if we're having these isolated moments with our phones. It's me saying, oh, I want to see what's on this phone. And again, not to be overly simplistic, but that's because it's with me. I had not met somebody yet who can type on their phone when they're not holding it, right? So as a result of the interaction, then we become dependent on our phones. And again, back to the human relationships, this is the same way we form human relationships. And when I'm saying dependence, I don't want us to think of that in a negative way. We become dependent on the people around us. When we've had a hard day, we call our friends, we talk to our spouses. When we need help with the kids, we may call our neighbors for help, right? So we grow these dependencies on the people around us in a pretty healthy way. In the same way, with our phones, they do a lot of great things for us. They really do. There are things that we can get done and accomplish, and relationships we can have, and FaceTimes all across the country. Like, that's a really cool thing that we have those dependencies. Where it begins to get a little bit toxic for us is when we grow into what I would call false dependencies. And so false dependency is where we believe we actually need our phone for a specific thing. And the best example that I know is when it comes to our phones in our rooms at night. We all know you shouldn't look at your phones before bed. The blue light, it kills your sleep. We all know we shouldn't get the deluge of information we get when we wake up in the morning and we pick up our phones. Yet we sleep with our phones in our room. And if you ask anybody, most people would say, I have it in there because it's my alarm clock. Hold on a second. There are things that we all grew up with called real alarm clocks that will do the same job for you, right?
Right.
But we are into this state of false dependency on our phone. So this is a long monologue on the PID loop, but let's think of how it all comes together. We are around our phones, 91% of us 24 hours a day, which means that we're interacting with them virtually constantly. As a result, we feel dependence on our phones. And the more dependent we feel around them, then we're just going to be around them more. And then we're going to interact with them more, and then we're going to be more dependent on them. So this loop continues on and on and on in a very invirtuous cycle. And if we can go to the very beginning of that, if we can go to that proximity, let's begin there and say, I need to break this, then we're going to find the rest of that. We're going to interact with it less. We're going to realize we don't need it quite as much. And so as a result, we're going to be around it a little bit less. And that continues on and on and on. What I've just described is a very complex way to say, put down your phone, which I realize is an extraordinarily difficult thing. It's very similar to saying, hey, burn more calories than you consume. Simple, very, very simple solution, but a very complex and difficult thing to actually undertake.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so subconscious for me. Sometimes I just don't even realize I'm on my phone or that I'm picking up my phone constantly, or when I get that weekly screen report that it's gone up X percent. So I can absolutely see how we just are unaware of it. But how have you seen it impact relationships, and especially relationships with our kids? I saw you in a speech somewhere say that, our kids are mimicking us on our phones. And it's really hard to tell your teenager, hey, don't be on your phone all the time, when they've literally watched you do that as they grow up. And you had this awesome, really great quote. And I apologize if I'm stealing it from you, but you said, kids will have more of other people's memories than they will of their own memories. And that just stopped me dead in my tracks. I mean, that just killed me.
I know. I said that to my daughter after I heard that. I said, and then she gives me the Christian move. Dad, hold on. Look at this TikTok. But yeah, that knocked me out. So I agree with you on that for sure.
Well, it is, again, in the spirit of not being shameful or judgmental, we still do have to look at the truth, and we do have to recognize what is at stake here. And when it comes to our kids, this is what's at stake. And none of us want to hear it. None of us want to, see it or really look at it in the face. But when you look at it in the face, when you hear something like this, it'll change your perspective on it. And again, I'll repeat it for the listener, is that if we don't do something, and that's a really important precursor to this, is because this is not a fact of life. This is not something that is unmovable. This is something that's movable for us. But if we don't do something, then this generation of kids who are on Instagram and TikTok, this generation of kids will be the very first generation of kids in history who will die having consumed more of other people's memories than memories they create on their own. And I just don't want that for my kids. And yes, and we're going to talk about this more, where we begin. And you touched on it, Megan, is where we begin. It's with us. Because when it comes to parenting, and again, I'm just going to preface it, and sorry to just continue to give these kind of disclaimers. We're 17 years in. We're still learning. My parents didn't model this for me because they didn't have phones. They didn't know how to disciple me, right? They didn't know how to take me by the hand and lead me along here. So we are learning. However, we are at a point right now with The Anxious Generation coming out this year by Jonathan Haidt that everybody has read. We know the damage. And so the excuses are kind of getting removed. And then we can also feel it. We just feel it. We know it. And we see it. But when it comes to our phones as parents, we follow what we call the 3 M's. This is the model for kind of parenting around technology, is we as parents we model a bad relationship with our phone. There's the first M. We model this bad relationship. We'll phone snub our kids when they're trying to talk to us. We'll sit watching a family movie on our phones. We'll have our phones at the dinner table. We're modeling this bad relationship with our kids. And then someday we give our kids a phone. And of course, what do? They just mimic what they have seen modeled, right? Because you just do the things you think are normal. That's what you believe is normal. So they mimic what we model. They phone snub us. They have their phones at the dinner table. And then we do something that is absolutely crazy with the third M, is we have the audacity to get mad at our kids for mimicking what we've modeled, as if they learned it anywhere else.
That's more truth than I'm comfortable with. Hold on a minute. I need to sit with that one a minute. We get mad at them for doing what they've seen us do, modeling. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
That's right.
Okay.
That they just, and again, there are a bunch of different applications of this, and there are a bunch of different examples throughout history. One of the biggest examples is smoking. When you think about smoking, and since they began this kind of stopped me in my tracks when I saw this. Since they began tracking smoking in adults, since they began keeping those statistics, smoking in adults and I think they began doing this like in the 70s or 80s. Smoking in adults is down 78% since they began tracking that data. And they also began tracking, a few years later, they began tracking data of smoking in adolescence. And smoking in adolescence, from when they began tracking it to now, is down, I'll give you a guess, but it's also down 78%. It's down the exact same percentage as adults. That should tell us something, because and this makes sense. I mean, I'm overcomplicating this and saying something that we all know. When you think something's normal, you're just going to do it. You're just going to do what's the normal behavior, because think about our kids. Our kids are adapting machines. That's all they do from a young age. This goes into neuroplasticity and stuff that's, too complex for me to understand. But their brains are continuing to be rewired. So what are they doing? They're observing, they're learning, adapting, observing, learning, adapting, observing, learning, adapting. It's a tongue twister. So they're just adapting, and then their behavior is going to be reflective of what they've observed, what they've learned, and what they've adapted to. So when it comes to our phones, they're going to mimic what we model. And so, yeah, that kind of sucks. But the great news is this: they're going to mimic what we model. So what if we modeled a great relationship with our phone? What if we prioritized our relationship with people over our relationship with our phone? That when someone talks to us, we put it down, that we don't have it at a dinner table. We'll go into a few very practical things you can do in your home in a little bit. But what if we began to model that? And what if they mimicked that? What if they mimicked that? And then you can make memories and make magical moments and any other cool M you can think of, right? Is that we do that because, and I want, if there's like a sound bite, it's this one, because everybody's concerned about this for their kids, is the number one predictor of your child's future phone use is your current phone use. That's the number one. That's statistically backed. The number one predictor of the way your child will someday use a phone is how you are using your phone today. And what a cool opportunity. Like, what an awesome thing that we can all do. Because Megan, and I'll let others speak in a moment, I promise.
No, this is great. I mean,
no.
You think about your kids, and Megan, I don't want to put you on the spot. Ted will put you on the spot as well. But Megan, because your kids are young, have they ever said to you, they gave you your phone the other day, have they ever said, "Mommy, no phone, Mommy, put down your phone"? Have you ever heard a line similar to that?
Not in so many words, but they will try to get my attention and say my name over and over, or say, "Look at this," or, watch this, or whatever it might be. And I am too concerned with whatever I got to do on my phone, which at the time feels really important. But then I look back and I'm like, I just should have put it down or stopped or done whatever.
Yeah. Well, we hear from countless people who tell about because our kids are just wonderful little truth serums. Like, they don't have a filter, which is great, right? Like, it's awesome that they will just tell us directly what they do, because a lot of kids, when they get young, kids are born with this natural need for connection. And then we put this unnatural device, this unnatural thing in between that, and they get a little mad about it. They don't love that feeling. And so they will tell us, they'll say, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." They say your name over and over and over again. Or the people will say, "Mommy, put down your phone. Daddy, no phone." and people they begin to go down a little bit of a shame spiral there for themselves. But I would encourage somebody, if they're listening and they've heard that line before, I want you to celebrate that. I want you to actually, let's spin that into the positive. And I'll tell you why. There are two reasons why. The first reason, if your child has told you directly and explicitly, mommy, no phone, mommy, watch me, daddy, put down your phone. If you've heard that, that's good, because for one reason, they like you. Like let's pause there for a moment. That's good. Like we want that. We want our kids to like us. That's not something that may always be there, but if they're saying that, that means they like you. And the second one I think is even more powerful is they believe that they have enough innate value that deserves for you to look at them. They believe they're worth being looked at. And who of us doesn't want that? Like, that's awesome. That's great. So let's continue to foster that. Where we need to get nervous is when our kids stop saying it to us, when they stop saying, mommy, watch me, daddy, watch me, because then all of a sudden they begin to believe, oh, that phone's more important than I am. That's okay. They're not even mad about it at that point. They're just worn down like that. We don't want that in any way. And the good news is, if you've stopped hearing mommy watch me, and Ted, I think you'd agree. I'd love your opinion on this. For me, as my kids have gotten older, the daddy watch me moments have gotten a lot more subtle, where they'll just throw out a little bid to see if I'll pick up on it. Do you relate to that, Ted? Do you feel that like they still want your attention, but they may not say it quite as overtly?
Right. It's different things. It's even a nod and a look. Did you see that? I didn't ask for it, but did you see that? So if we're looking down, I wonder how many nods I've missed because I was looking at the phone and I missed the nod. So I definitely think they start, becoming too cool a little bit, like to ask for it, but they definitely want it. One question I have for you, I feel like one of the other excuses, like you were saying, that people keep it in their room for an alarm clock. I think a lot of times people have it, they go, because I want to take a picture. I want to take a picture. And I think that we miss memories trying to capture them actually. Is that, do you have any thoughts on that? Cause I've struggled with that, cause I do love having photos and we have fun with them, but what are your thoughts?
This is and I love that you asked that question, because this is where I want to invite people out into the gray. Let's go. This is going to be an unsatisfying conversation if you're waiting for a magic bullet at the end. If you're waiting for the mandate for you to throw away your smartphone and get a flip phone, because that's not coming, and it's not true. And on the far end of the spectrum, that also doesn't mean that we have to fully embrace and accept everything our phone and say there's nothing we can do about it. So this is an invitation into the messy middle, as Andy Stanley would call it, into the messy middle. So that is one where my photo, my photo album is full of pictures, because we love taking pictures. We were just in California on family vacation and we had so much fun. We took a bunch of pictures and that was great. There are moments when we can over catalog, when we can absolutely overtake some of those pictures. And is that necessarily bad? I don't know. But I think that where we can kind of get caught is in two ways. One of them is, you're right, not really being in the moment, wanting so much more you're just imagining what filter you're going to put on it before you get put it on Instagram, right? Versus being in the moment. But then the other one is, we do start to go astray. We take a picture, then we feel a text. And so then we go check out that text, and then we go check out the weather. And so it's the things that happen after it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like the things that continue on. And so we get kind of sucked into this and we are fully pulled out of the moment. And there are little things we can do. We know you want pictures. One thing that I encourage people to do all the time, especially if you're maybe on a date night, because there are also, you say things like, well, we got a babysitter with the kids. I need to know if they're there. One very easy little hack here is just swap phones with your partner. Or my wife and I go on a walk virtually every night. That's been a practice we've had this summer, which I love. And so I leave my phone. She brings hers, but I carry her phone, because I'm not going to get lost in her phone.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just a very small little thing. And here's what's the premise of all of this. And if you're watching, you can't see here, but we have Atomic Habits by James Clear behind us. And so one thing that a real principle of his is this idea that environments is always stronger than willpower. That if we are reliant on our willpower and just mustering up the strength in every moment to do something, that will give out every time. Environment will always be stronger. So talk about an environmental flip that we just said there. Swap phones with your partner on a date night. Take one of your phones and let the opposite person hold it. Take pictures when you need to and take it from something else. I honestly, like, people have ideas and I think it's a good idea. Digital cameras and all that stuff. It's too much for me. I still take them on my phone. You know what I mean? And so it's, and I do think it's really fun also to document those moments and have those moments. But I think, I think a lot of people know, like, yeah, this is kind of getting in the way and this is where the consciousness begins. So I love that question. And that's one of those kind of messy middle questions that we do have to kind of wrestle through. And frankly, I'm pretty glad I have a lot of pictures, but I also know at times, like, I just need to have that moment versus, watch the sunset versus taking a picture of it.
One of our rules over the years have been, if we know there's a professional photographer at something, we're out. Like, we'll let them take it. I mean, why in the world am I taking one on my phone 12 rows back when there's a professional photographer? So that's been something for us that's been helpful, or we've kind of limited our number of them. I'm going to get one of this. I'm probably worse about that than my wife, but I'll try to go, okay, I'm just going to grab one part of this. My daughter's in theater and I'm going to capture it a little bit and then back out.
And I think that this may not even make sense when I say it, is that the discomfort we feel around screens, having had them for 17 years, we do look at them, and I referenced a second ago, in such binary terms where it's just like, it's all good or it's all bad. And I think that for people to really be effective at this, it does require some real introspection to say, like, well, why? Like, is it bad for me to take a video? Like, my daughter asked me, she plays volleyball at her high school, and she asked me after a scrimmage the other day, oh, Dad, did you get any pictures or videos? And I didn't. I was fully focused on her. But then I thought, well, okay, she wants pictures and videos of her playing, so I'm going to start doing that a little bit. And so it's like the inherence, there's no inherently bad thing. I just think, like, we just want to label things bad or good. There's nothing inherently bad or good about taking pictures and videos, right? It's just all like, what is the purpose it serves? In the same way you think about proximity, our phones being with us all the time. The only thing that I can think of that is with me all the time is clothing. Other than my phone is clothing. And there are a lot of people I interact with every day that are really glad that I have clothes proximate to me, right? Like, that's good, right? So it's not as if even the fact that we have our phones with us is bad. It's like, okay, well, what is that preventing? That is preventing. What is that getting in the way of? My clothes are with me all the time, and that's a good thing. But what is my phone getting in the way of? So I hope that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but again, it's back into this kind of call into the gray to really explore what our intentions are. And that's what this is all about too. Like, the life I want is a focused and present life, an intentional life, and a distraction, by my definition, and maybe it's not much of an epiphany. Distraction is anything that gets in the way of your intentions. So if I'm going to family dinner and I want to if I'm going on a date with my wife, I intend to be focused and with her, but it's very easily to be subverted by this thing that's always with us versus removing it from the situation and then not having to decide against looking at it again because my environment is conducive to that.
That's good.
Absolutely.
That's really good.
I love that. One tip I got from a friend one time, and it was so simple, but so smart, I think, on her part. She's like, we go on family vacations and I will take pictures with my phone and videos and things like that to document the memory, but I do not get on social media. I don't post anything on social media. I'll do it at the end of the trip on the plane ride or car ride home when there's, nothing else to do and my kids are doing other things. But I try to really be in the moment with my kids on the trip. And then, if I want to post anything to social media, I do it after the fact. And she's like, we have this need to feel like we have to get it out into public consumption at the time that we're doing it. And that robs us of those memories. So I thought that was a great little tip that I've tried to put into practice.
Love that.
So because we always have our phones and they're always, I thought that stat that you said about, that we spend most of our time, not because of notifications, but because we go down that rabbit hole was really interesting. Cause I just always assumed it's because it's constantly dinging and we're getting notified of different things. And we see it flash while we're sitting here. And that's why we're spending so much time on it. But I think to your point of going down the rabbit hole is spot on. So what can families do about it? How can they break these habits and break this cycle.
As a guiding principle, we always begin at a very unsatisfying place for parents, but it's with the recognition. Let's go back to, let's recognize what's at stake. Our relationships are at stake. The intimacy in our relationships is at stake. And I just mean the closeness. I'm not referring to anything physical there, just the closeness of our relationships at stake. And maybe for most of us, the thing that drives us the most is our kids' futures truly are at stake. And so with all of that said, we encourage people, we just say start, stop. And when I say start, here's where it's going to get unsatisfying. Stay with me, is you have to start with yourself. That's the only place to begin. Jonathan Haidt gave some great guidelines in the anxious generation about when should kids get phone. Kids don't get phones until high school. They don't get social media until they're 16. And you got to get rid of phones in schools. And the Surgeon General says that we need a national strategy to advance connection and all these things. These are great. Congress passed a ban on TikTok and all these things are good. But the thing is, I can't wait for Congress to do this for me. I can't wait for the Surgeon General to do it for me. I can't wait for the school board to do it. And frankly, even if I delay my kid, if I'm not modeled it well, then it's not really going to take hold. It's not going to matter as much, even though I firmly agree with this delay. There's an organization that's just launched called Hang 10, and it encourages people to wait until 10th grade. That's Justin Whitmell Early, who's a great author who some of you may have heard of. So they've just launched this great initiative called Hang 10, which encourages people to do that. But all of this has to start with ourselves. And we have gotten so accustomed to pointing the finger. And I'll speak. I can speak directly to the fellas. I've gotten in real trouble of doing that when I speak to the ladies, but I'll say to the guys, stop blaming your spouse. Stop blaming your kids. Stop saying it's their problem. It's your problem. And I can hit you directly with that. But let's begin with ourselves, because that's the only thing that we can control. And if you start with yourself, that's the right place to start. And I'll say, if everybody took that advice in America, start with yourself, this crisis would be done this afternoon, maybe a little bit after lunch, right? If we all started with ourselves. So that's the start part. The stop part is for you to stop at nothing to get it right. You got to stay. Don't quit fighting. This is a battle worth fighting. I believe this is the greatest opportunity we have as parents to give good things to our kids, to give good things to our relationships. So stop at nothing. So let's say we were out, Ted, you and I are working out, or Megan, you and I are working out, and I'm on the bench press, and I get to a rep where I fail, and I can't lift it. You pick it up, you spot it for me. I wouldn't quit weightlifting for the rest of my life, right? The next day I would and I'd lift a little bit again. And so I think we get so discouraged when it comes to this topic that I failed again. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. No. That just means you got to get back on the bench and you got to keep working again. And that's okay. And this is for somebody, and take whatever measures. When I say stop at nothing, take whatever measures you need to. Some people may need to go to a flip phone. I don't advocate for that, but some people may say, I have to have it. We are launching in conjunction with Dr. Darren Whitehead at the Church of the City in Nashville, and with Gabe Lyons at Think Media. We're launching a church-led initiative called The Digital Fast, and it's based on a book that Darren Whitehead wrote. So that's early January of next year. People can look at that at digitalfast2025.com. But we're doing that because we believe the church can lead this. For people who are people of faith, like the church can lead culture when it comes to technology. And we got to keep doing things like a digital fast to kick off the year. Or again, not a product pitch for RO, but if you struggle with this, RO is a great tool for you to say hey, I'm going to stop at nothing to get this right and go to whatever measure. And I'm going to use this platform to help me get there. But don't feel like you have to be so reliant on your own willpower. Look to these tools that can help you towards this, and absolutely stop at nothing to get this right.
Right. And, I love that. Joy, you said you don't want to do a product pitch, and I totally appreciate that. And we don't want that either. At the same time, you've created this incredible tool. I want you to talk about it. We want you to talk about it. Talk about RO for a little bit.
Yeah, RO, just a quick precursor. The term RO is probably an unfamiliar word to most people. RO comes from the Maori culture, and it's a term that means to notice, to turn towards, to take heed. And that is back to this whole thing. Why do we need to put our phones down? Well, so that we can turn towards, that we can notice, that we can take heed of the people that are most important to us. So that's the goal. It's the life that happens on the other side. So RO is a platform to help you break the constant proximity of your phone and be present in the moment. So we do that through the RO app. People can download the RO app on a trial for free at the App Store. Just do that now. And then if people want to level up, and you can do that all through software. If people want to level up and say, hey, I actually would love a place in my home to put my phone, we do have the RO box as well. That is something that people can add on to the app. And it's the place for your phone. And I don't know if you use video, but over my shoulder here, the RO box, it's a beautiful white fabric wrapped box with a bamboo lid, charges your phone when you put your phone in there. And what the RO platform does is it quantifies the amount of time that you are away from your phone. Because again, back to the PID loop, proximity, interaction, dependence. If we can solve that proximity piece, that solves most of the problem. So let's get our phones away from us. Let's join the 9% club of people who are away from their phones sometime on a daily basis. So the RO app quantifies that time and it gamifies the experience of being away from your phone. The RO box is great. The RO box, what that does is it serves not only as a place for your phone that holds it and charges it, but also serves as this visual cue of you being present and intentional. And hey, the Odom family, my family, we are present and we're intentional. And this box symbolizes that because we set aside this phone, so that we can be present with the people around us. So the RO platform is built all around that. We've been out for a couple of years and continuing to focus on this really within families. And let's help families get this right. And yes, there are a lot of applications. This will work for somebody else who's, maybe single, somebody who doesn't have a family, but it really is designed for family, the whole application around that. And the cool thing is we hear story after story after story of family who have said, this has been the difference maker for me. I struggled with this. I didn't know what to do. And RO has been the difference for me. So, which actually is a dream come true for us. Heath and I, when we first set out with this, we said, what if someday we heard about a marriage that was impacted by this? What if we heard about kids who had mom and dad back because of this? And we hear those stories on a daily basis, and it's a dream come true. And we have this crazy, crazy idea that we can create an entire generation of intentional families. And I believe by getting this right, that is 80% of the way there, because we're setting aside this thing so that we can prioritize the people and feelings and emotions and everything that's around us and the beauty of the life that's around us just by setting this thing aside.
I love that.
I love it.
You used
That's
the example
what
of
it's all
smoking
about.
earlier, right? And I love the thought of, once people got the data, once people understood the damage, they started making different choices, not only for themselves, but for their families. And so I love what you guys have created. Such a powerful way.
Well, and I don't know if my phone's getting old or battery's dying or whatever it might be, but I love the thought of at 5 o'clock when I'm done with work, putting my phone in the box, being present with my kids, doing dinner, bedtime, whatever it is, and then having it charged after they're in bed so I can do whatever I need to do and having it away for that time period. Because I always have to plug it in around 5 o'clock because I think it's dying.
Well, Megan, what's cool is about that, and we hear this from a lot of people as well, is you're going to be surprised at how quickly you forget about it. And we can go into a long discussion on habit versus addiction. A lot of smart people saying is we're not actually addicted to our phones. We may compulsively use them, but we're not going to suffer a bunch of physical withdrawal symptoms from this. And I'm talking about the vast majority of us, but this actually, you're going to find that you're going to like the life around you a lot more, and you're going to forget about your phone very quickly because you're actually, and I have this core belief that life and the world around us is a lot more compelling than our phones when we give it a chance to be. And so we're going to forget about our phones pretty quickly. And I think you'll experience that. I think a lot of people have already experienced that. And when we realize that, then that pull of our phone, the allure of our phone will just be a lot less kind of dulled and grayed out and washed out.
Yeah. And less overstimulation. I just think I feel so much better when I'm not constantly looking at it. I just get overstimulated with all the notifications.
Well, and the rewards feel pretty instantaneous with kids. I mean, I know with teenagers, you're going to get the rolled eyes, you're going to get the frustration. My kid's biggest deal is, but I need to know, like I need this information, like when I've got them, but I need to know this one. I used to live in a thing where you didn't really know anything. Like who won the World Series last year? I don't know. Well, okay.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's right.
I just don't know. But the value that comes back is almost instantaneous. On the All Pro Dad podcast, Joey, we always want to leave dads with one practical pro move. Like, here's one simple thing you can do. Could you give both moms and dads, could you give us a pro move? Can you give us some practical takeaways?
Would it be okay if I gave you 3?
Absolutely.
And you can pick. We'll let everybody pick. So we say this is a lot to digest. And I hope that people receive a lot of this as just foundational. Just let this seep into your subconscious. And then, okay, what do I do now? Again, the guiding principle, start with yourself, stop at nothing, take whatever measures you need to here. But then what can I do today? So we have 3 things, and we call these the 3 S's. And so choose from any of these. And I would encourage you just begin with one, and you can kind of layer them on as you go along. But the first one is for you to spend 1 hour physically distant from your phone a day. There's the S, spend 1 hour physically distant from your phone every day, which that's hard. So if you can't do an hour, then do 5 minutes. So just start with 5 minutes. And I want you to think of this. Don't think of this as a quick fix. I want people to think of this as a lifelong journey of building a muscle, right? So start with 5 minutes, and then tomorrow do 6. And then the next day do 7. And then the next day do 8, right? So slowly build up that muscle. It's okay. If you've done that, again, we talk about that 91% of us have our phones with us all the time. You are in the 9% club if you spend 5 minutes a day physically distant from your phone. So just begin there. Spend 1 hour physically distant. If you can't do an hour, do 5 minutes. And if you're already doing an hour, do an hour and a half. So you have to focus on that proximity. So that's one. The second time is I want you to think around your home, and I want you to think about times and places. And we're going to call these sacred times and sacred places. Sacred times, sacred places where your phone does not go. And the easiest one to begin is the dinner table. Let's just say dinner table, it's no phone zone. That is sacred to us. And sacred, it kind of elevates it when you call it sacred. The phone is sacred. By the way, for people who have kids who have phones, and we don't mandate a bunch, we don't prescribe a bunch, but what I would say is don't let your kids have their phones in the rooms overnight. Just don't. There's a bunch of go Google why you shouldn't instead of having me talk to it, but it's super important. That's one we do prescribe. But again, first one is spend an hour physically distant from your phone every day. Number 2 is establish sacred times and sacred places. And then the third one, this is my favorite one. This is a little bit more art more than it is science. And it's just to search for moments of connection. Those moments of connection are happening all around us. My daughter comes in from volleyball and says, Dad, it was a rough practice. Oh, there's a moment, potential moment. My wife says like, oh, I'm so frustrated right now with the school. Okay, there's something. My son says, Dad, can I talk to you about something? Okay, there's something. And there's a response. This is a moment for you. That moment's not going to happen without your response. And your response, I believe in that moment, you can say the 6 most powerful words in the English language in a relationship in 2024. And they're real basic. It's let me put down my phone. That's it. I know that sounds overly simplistic, and I understand. Don't discount this because it's so simple, because it's so powerful. Say, let me put down my phone. Just that simple word, just almost in passing, and then physically put your phone somewhere else. If you have an RO box, put it in the RO box. If you have a drawer, which I bet you do, put it in a drawer, but put it physically distant from you, and then sit down and make eye contact, because what you're doing is communicating something unbelievably powerful to a relationship. What you're saying to that person is, there are 8 billion people on earth who can theoretically reach me on my phone. And you are more important than every single one of them right now. So let's just think for a minute what that can do for a relationship. Let's think what that can do for the closeness and intimacy in a relationship. Let's think about, for my 14-year-old daughter, what that does for her, a girl who is in high school and figuring out who she is and who has all the stuff around her, that the next time that she may feel bullied, or the next time that she is tempted to kind of go into the world of body comparison and all that kind of stuff, that she has a moment that says, I know I'm valuable. I know because my dad looks in my eyes. That gets me choked up talking about it, because I know that I have value because my dad looks in my eyes. What does that do for my son, a young man who wants to be a good man, right? What does that do for my wife after 20 years and that intimacy and closeness in our relationship? What does that do to strengthen a marriage, to tell her after all this time together, you're still the one I see? So I'm going to hit those one more time. 1, spend an hour physically distant from your phone. 2, establish sacred times and sacred places where your phone doesn't go. And 3, just the most beautiful, cool opportunity we have, which is to search for moments of connection. And here's the cool thing. You don't need a box to do this, and you don't need an app to do this. You can do it right now. So I dare anybody out there to test me right now. Test me today and try any one of these 3 out. And I promise you that whether it's today or down the road, they will notice, and you will see that muscle built over time and those relationships getting stronger over time just by implementing these very, very small things.
Gosh, Megan, I don't know about you, but I am pumped up right now.
I am too. I'm going to try it today. I'm going to try all 3 today. I love it. I love it.
Go.
I love that.
It's so easy. Such easy steps. Like you said, you can start small and work your way up. It doesn't have to be this thing overnight that you just like go cold turkey going along with the addiction metaphor. But I love those 3 easy steps. So
That's
practical.
Right. Joey, you've done a great job at not only painting the issue, but also some of the solutions and also what happens if we do. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Thank you guys for doing what you're doing. It's so huge.
Yes.
It's so needed. You're so ahead of the curve on this. It just could not matter more. It's kind of this crazy thing that no one's calling crazy. So thanks for calling out crazy, but not just calling it crazy, giving us some solutions. Thank you so much for being with us. How can people find out more about what you guys are doing? I know we're going to put it in the show notes, but
I would love the first step, the most important step. I would say people just go download the app. It's just the ARO. Download it wherever you get apps. Search ARO, download the app, and try it for free. See if this is something that will fit for you. If you want to learn more about just kind of generally, please go to goaro.com, GOARO.com. And we're also going to give listeners here, we're going to give a discount on the box. If you decide to level up on the box after you have a subscription, to get a discount on the box, that code will be family first at checkout. So you can get a discount there. And I'm sure you all will link all that in the show notes with details. But we do want families to win. That's who we're here for. So try it out with the app. Just go download the RO app and then use family first at checkout to get a discount on the RO box.
I love that. Well, thanks
Awesome.
again for joining us.
Thanks so much, Joey.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMOM, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the All Pro Dad Play of the Day, by going to allprodad.com/subscribe and get daily powerful and practical fatherhood tips in your inbox. The All Pro Dad podcast is hosted by me, Ted Lowe, produced by Bobby Lewis.